Mine looks like it's already recording. It says stop recording.
Then you're recording. Again, we set yours to record on start broadcast, so you're all set.
Okay. All right, everyone. Welcome to segment 1, October 2017 class. Today's class is going to be on Moon Square the Nodes. Moon Square the Nodal Axis. Before that, though, here's our good old housekeeping slide. If you're not familiar, Leroy and I do a weekly podcast that you can tune into. All of our general educational and forecasting webinars end up in the Astro Library under one of these 3 sections. You can subscribe 1, 6, or 12 months, or you can do a monthly that you recur at any time. You can do this with a single section, or you can do it with all 3. And then, of course, you are a student of segment 1, and you can see we have 3 different segments here that you can get materials with DVDs. You can get digital only, or you can get both materials and digital. And so as we move into Moon Square the Nodal Axis, first of all, evolutionary astrology is based upon observation correlation. It is not anything that you take on blind faith. It is something that you can learn the principles and you can observe it and correlate it for yourself. So it is a knowledge-based system, even though its knowledge is spiritual principles. In EA, we understand that a planet, a sign, and a house are based upon one interchangeable archetype, one of the 12 archetypes of the zodiac. For example, Mars rules Aries, and Mars rules the first house. So Mars, Aries in the first house is one archetype, and they all share the same archetypical principles. Even if we're going to apply them, Mars being the planetary energy, Aries being a sign on a certain house. Again, Jeffrey Green always used to say, you learn the 12 archetypes of the zodiac, and then you can understand a planet, a sign, or a house. So understanding astrology in general starts with learning these 12 archetypes. Now, as we go through these planetary series, square the nodal axis, you can easily take these archetypical principles of each of these planets and extrapolate it into the 12 archetypes of the zodiac. When we look at the moon is the ruler of the sign Cancer, and it is the ruler of the 4th house in the natural circle of the 12 houses. And this archetype, Cancer in the 4th house, is the active polarity, energy moving out from the center. It is the cardinal modality, meaning it is always about initiating things. And it is the element of water, which is the emotions. So when we start looking at the basic archetypes of the moon, one of the first ones to understand is this is the archetype of emotional self-reliance. It is the first sign in the first house of the circle of 12 that is the element of water. And so here is where we are going to learn internal security versus emotional. Again, water is the emotional element. Here we're going to learn internal security versus emotional security from external factors. External factors, of course, start with the appearance, and then it can be your culture, it can be your job, your spouse or lover, it can be your resources. There can be all kinds of external factors throughout life that we go outside of ourselves to make us secure. And when we do that, sooner or later, some way, somehow, we're always going to get thrown back in upon ourselves in order to minimize any external dependencies and maximize our own internal security. In other words, this is going to be the lesson to know and trust ourselves, that will then allow us to know and trust our outer world. When you think about Moon, Cancer, fourth house, and emotional self-reliance, where does it come from? It actually comes from that solar plexus area of the gut. Do you trust your instinct? Do you trust your emotions? Do you trust how you feel? And we'll look at this in more detail here, but depending upon whether our early environment is perceived as trusting is whether or not we trust that world. Typically, we're always going to find varying degrees of feeling insufficiently nurtured, appreciated, and understood on emotional levels. In other words, if we're not feeling that we can completely satisfy any and all of our emotions, then we will feel that the world doesn't love us. We will feel that somebody in our environment, some situation in our environment isn't appreciating us, isn't nurturing us. Again, we'll get thrown in upon ourselves to learn how to supply that, rely, self-reliance back upon ourselves on an emotional level. The Moon, Cancer, fourth house is the archetype of recognizing the basis and causal factors of our emotions, moods, feelings. Now in EA, feelings were known as an instant reaction to an external stimuli, and emotions are the reaction to our feelings. Jeffrey Green would give the example of feelings being more like Libra. You say something nasty to my face, but I had that Libra smile on, and I can pretend that you didn't say that to me. And then emotions, he would always say, are kind of like that Scorpio reaction you get where you go, wait a minute, that wasn't nice. And so again, feelings, instinctive reaction to external stimuli, and underneath that are the emotions that react to the feelings. And here in the fourth house and Cancer Moon, we're always going to get to those deeper and deeper levels of emotions versus what's going on in regards to the surface. This is the archetype of self-image. And a lot of this is related to the moon traveling so fast through the zodiac. The moon takes 2.5 days to go through a sign of the zodiac, takes a month to go all through the circle of the zodiac, and in 1 month, the moon aspects every other planet in every possible way. And that is those continual changing emotions that are always going on because our environment is continually changing moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day. Now, our sense of individuality and its self-image is very susceptible to our early influences. More on this in a little bit. But the thing of it is think about this yourself, or think about if you've been a parent to a child. You know, young children will take a message in wholesale from parents and culture. For the most part, children aren't racist. They pick that up through the conditioning factors of the parental environment or the culture that they were raised up in. And so we spend our entire lifetime learning how to mature our emotions, our emotional reactions to anything that comes at us, our emotional responses, and of course, then evolving our self-image, evolving what we emotionally reflect back to ourselves and see as this is who I am and this is who I am not. And that self-image can really evolve over a lifetime as we break free from our early conditioning factors, whatever they were in our particular world. So the moon, again, is the archetype of all of our early environmental conditionings. And as we were saying before, they start with the parents, but they can be cultural, religious, economic. There's all kinds of environmental conditionings that come at us in our world. And those environmental conditionings are really known by the entire chart and every archetype in the chart, and also by that polarity, Saturn, and its rulership of Capricorn in the 10th house, because that is society. That is the pressure to conform from any culture or society. But most of the time, those early environmental conditionings are going to start with the mom and or dad. And the moon, Cancer, and the 4th house in general are known as the nurturing parent. Now, in its totality, this will include the moon by the sign it's in, whatever house it's in, and whatever aspects it makes. Add on to that what signs on the 4th house cusp. Are there planets in the 4th house? Do they make aspects? What sign or signs does Cancer, or excuse me, what house or houses does this sign Cancer rule? Are there planets in Cancer? Do they make aspects? All that together is going to be what we know as the nurturing parent. Now, traditionally, nurturing parent was mom, authoritarian parent was dad. That's not true so much in our modern society anymore. Sometimes the nurturing parent is the father, and the authoritarian parent is the mother. Here again, this is where we have to observe, correlate, observe, correlate. Can even bring in the grandparents here. Grandmother being nurturing or authoritarian, same with grandfather. And of course, then the authoritarian parent, whichever gender, will be the polarity of all this. It'll be Saturn, wherever it is natally by sign and house and aspects it makes. What sign is on the 10th house cusp? Are there planets in the 10th house? Do they make aspects? What house or houses does Capricorn rule? Are there planets in Capricorn? Do they make aspects? All of this is going to be included in those early environmental conditionings, just by factor that the polarity of Cancer is Capricorn and the polarity of the 4th house is the 10th house. That's going to come into this picture of, again, these early environmental conditioning factors. Now, many, many times what we will find, and a lot of this is due to, thousands of years of patriarchal conditionings, whether they're religious or societal or both. Many, many times one and or both parents will either be physically and or emotionally unavailable. This means that in those early environmental conditionings, they couldn't understand who we were. They didn't understand what our emotional needs were. So either choosing not to understand or having an inability to understand, consensus parents in a first spirituated soul that came in very sensitive. Parents can't understand, so they don't have an ability to meet those needs. So when we have those unmet emotional needs, they will translate into emotional displacements, and they can even translate into having the quote-unquote bottomless pit when it comes to our emotional needs being met. And here then it relates back to that archetype of emotional self-reliance, where a parent who either will not or cannot meet our needs throws us back in upon ourselves. How well can we meet those needs? Do we deny our emotions? Emotional self-reliance is not emotional denial. Do we, turn into the childlike soul who never wants to grow up and keeps looking for the missing parent in our adult relationships? There can be a whole variety of emotional displacements that can be to any particular soul. Again, clues are in the entire chart. Clues can be to the natal Pluto sign and house that emotional signature is going to relate to. It's as varied as there are charts. What we will also find with the moon archetype is that there are two distinct emotional cycles: withdrawal and animation. And the withdrawal cycle is where we turn inward, we go silent, we, become emotionally cold or perceived as emotional cold or shut down in some way. And what it is it's a desire to go inward and be alone so that we can figure out what is causing me to feel this way. Where are these emotions coming from? And many times, the origin of these emotions that trigger us into withdrawal, they're coming from the subconsciousness. They're not right out there front and center. Oh, that's why I feel that way. No, we need that inner time to process these emotions, to uh, quandary, to ask, where is this coming from? And asking those questions and then figuring it out and working to process through it. Once we understand where the origin of these emotions are coming from that triggered us inward, then the other cycle gets triggered, the animation cycle. And animation is just going out there and emoting. All of a sudden, I want to talk about it. I want to share it. Boy, guess what I figured out? Oh man, did I really recognize an old parental pattern that I just keep repeating and repeating. And so we want to process the emotions as we have figured out why they are happening, where they are coming from. And we go through the animation cycle until sooner or later the withdrawal cycle is triggered and it starts all over again. Now, these withdrawal and animation cycles are natural. We all have a moon, we all have a fourth house, and we all have Cancer on some house or houses. We all go through this. These withdrawal animation cycles can fluctuate wildly. They can fluctuate kind of on the mild side as well. They are unpredictable. When I work with a client who has a fourth house Pluto or who has a lot of moon aspects in their chart, explaining this to them is just, it's life-saving. It's like, oh, I'm not crazy. I do feel this. I do feel all of this so intensely. And then if they can share this cycling with whoever they're relating to, it can take some pressure off of the relationship. They're not trying to trigger me. They're not trying to, necessarily control me through their shutdown. Yes, that can happen. But, assuming we're wanting to learn this, know it, understand it, communicate it, we're just trying to then work with it on a natural level as much as we can. So you can just take a moment and reflect for yourself. Where is your moon? What sign is it in? What house is it in? Just that sign and house will help you understand how you fluctuate through your own withdrawn and animation cycles. Now, everything that we're talking about in regards to these moon archetypes can be expressed when the moon is square the nodal axis. This is also the archetype of emotional maturation. Just like it is so much that early environmental conditioning factors and whether or not the world is safe and we can trust the world, by nature of that polarity with Saturn, Capricorn, and 10th house, by nature of getting thrown back in upon ourselves again and again, the intent and lesson is to evolve this archetype, to mature it, to reach that emotional self-reliance. I'm the only one responsible for making myself happy no matter what my circumstances are. That is something we can evolve to recognize as we move into our adulthood, regardless of what the early conditioning factors were. And so that emotional maturation, it's helping us evolve that emotional self-reliance, to evolve that self-image, and to evolve to greater and greater inner security. And this then helps us have some relative level of emotional homeostasis through any and all changes taking place in our life. Doesn't mean we're just going to be necessarily in a perpetual state of joy or perpetually with inner peace, but whatever comes at us in our environment, we learn how to get to that inner peace or emotional sense of I'm okay faster, faster. The waves don't have to, we don't have to have this pendulum swings to the extremes. And even when major upsets happen, it's moving us into that sense of balance faster, faster, easier, easier. In other words, we are creating such an inner emotional sense of ourself that the outer world rocks us less and less. Now, another archetype with Moon, Cancer, and 4th house, and this is also true for polarity, Saturn, Capricorn, and 10th, is here we have the archetype of our hormonal nature and what we know as gender switching. What this is it's correlating to the anima-animus psychological dynamic. Anima is the female, animus is the male. There is natural differences between being male and female, between the law of maleness and the law of femaleness. It's as simple as that male energy is the active polarity energy moving out from the center. The female energy is the passive polarity energy returning to the center. Now, we don't limit those two polarities down to male and female. You've got 12 signs, you've got 12 houses in your chart. You can be a masculine female, you can be a feminine male. Many times that will come when any soul has done gender switching. So what we can have here is when souls go through gender switching, it becomes its own source of emotional states and difficulties. If we have lifetimes being a male and we come back in as a female, hormonally, we don't maybe want to let go of that aggressiveness from all those male lifetimes, and vice versa. Now, over time, The natural process of reincarnation allows for the progression of uniting our male and female halves into integration. In other words, a soul is neither male nor female. It incarnates into one or the other, and as it goes back and forth between the two genders over time, it learns how to integrate the two. And so, regardless of what gender it comes through, it eventually learns how to access the inner male and the inner female and to balance them together and to express whichever is needed in any given circumstances they may be experiencing. EA always used to say, when you look at your evolved souls, the Jesus, the Yoganandas, the Buddhas, they become androgynous because they've had such experience at merging and balancing the male and the female. Now, in modern history, Yogananda was alive during the time period when we started having cameras. So we actually have photos of him. And if you look at him, you can ask yourself, male or female? The same thing is depicted of Jesus, by the way. We don't have photos of, but we have all kinds of drawings. And Jesus, the human, evolved human, as I like to say, is very much shown many times as being both male and female. That is that whole, again, androgyny of the soul balancing those two halves within itself. It's almost a microism of the macroism of the unmanifest manifesting itself into the world, and that law of polarity coming into being and then returning back to itself more than it was before the manifestation. When we get to souls that are third individuated and then moving through the spirituated states of soul consciousness, it is generally easier to do gender switching from lifetime to lifetime. In other words, we're starting to get what we've been talking about, and it's like, well, I need to have a lifetime in this gender, need to have 2 lifetimes in that one. Oh, now I need to go back to this one. It gets easier and easier to go back and forth. Typically, there's always exceptions to every rule, okay? Typically, when you're working with, some consensus souls, and even in consensus world, they're going to wear out incarnating as a female, and it's necessary to switch over to be male to further the evolutionary lessons. Typically, the less aware the soul is, the harder it is to deal with all of that gender switching. So you can just see, in just briefly looking at this, how much it can bring up on an emotional basis, in addition to the early environmental conditionings, in addition to whatever type of parents you chose coming around this lifetime. Just in addition to wherever the soul may be on its journey of emotional self-reliance. Now, specifically, the moon in and of itself doesn't signify gender switching. Could be part of some symbols of it, but it's not the only symbol. In evolutionary astrology, we look to gender switching when we see Pluto in the 4th house or Cancer, 10th house or Capricorn, or we see the nodal axis in the 4th, 10th house, either direction, or we see it in Cancer, Capricorn, either direction. I've even come to add on, when there's a planetary emphasis, if somebody has 5 planets in the 4th house, you would start to go, let's just explore, let's interact, questions and answers to see if there perhaps have been some gender switching. I've even had time periods where I'll see emphasis in the squares, first house Aries, seventh house Libra, to Cancer, Capricorn, fourth, 10th. And there'll be times where I'll just get an intuitive hit and it's just like, well, let's look at this issue. And feedback will come. Yeah, boy, oh boy, that makes sense for me. You know, the soul in question will know. If they do a sincere inner reflection, they'll know whether or not they're relating more to their inner male or their inner female, you know, and this can be based upon actually being those genders in a past life or previous lives. So those are the general archetypes for the moon that I've put together. And any questions, again, as always, with those who are on class live, you're welcome to type into your Q&A panel and ask Leroy some questions, or we can unmute you and you can ask. I'm going to move into the archetypes of the nodal axis now quickly. I'm going to repeat these every one of these classes because that way they will operate on a standalone class for someone who doesn't do the whole series and they just want to check their specific planet square the nodes. So briefly, North Node and South Node are not planets. They're points in space, and they're where the moon's path intersects the plane of the ecliptic, which is the Earth's actual path around the sun, but it's where the sun appears to move. When the moon crosses above the line of the ecliptic, that is the north or ascending node. 2 weeks later, with the transiting moon, it will cross below the ecliptic, and that will be the south node or the descending node. Here's the astronomy to it. Here's that path that the sun appears to be taking around Earth, the ecliptic. Here is the moon's path. Okay, here's the north node where the moon travels above the ecliptic. And then here is the south node where the moon travels below the ecliptic. And again, this is a geocentric or Earth-centered perspective. The nodal axis revolution precesses. It moves backwards. It takes 18.5 years to go around the zodiac. This reversing of the nodal axis, many astrologers in general have felt, signifies a return to universal source on a solar lunar level. The nodes are retrograde 90% of the time. They're direct 10% of the time. So again, the 90% who are born with the nodes retrograde, and all you've got to do is look at one of your computer printouts for the nodes, and if the nodes are retrograde, you'll see that little RX beside them. If the nodes are direct, you will not see the RX. But the 90% who were born with the nodes retrograde will feel a stronger sense of destiny early in life, and the 10% born with the nodes direct, many times will be later in life before that sense of destiny is understood, realized, manifested. The nodal axis transits each sign by approximately 18 months or a year and a half. For instance, many of you are probably aware that the transiting north node is reversing through Leo, while the transiting south node reverses through Aquarius. The south node is in evolutionary astrology, Pluto is always representative of the soul. Pluto by sign, soul generation you were born into. Pluto by natal house, your individual soul and its lessons, where it's coming from. The south node is the soul's ego from the past. It is the accumulation of all the emotional residues from all of our past lives. It represents security because it is what is known. It represents karma on a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual level. It represents the point of familiarity, both positive and negative. In other words, it can be the gifts we bring in. due to prior efforts, or it can be the Achilles heel that keeps tripping us up. It will also be sometimes called the point of stagnation. EA says that it is the prior mode of operation on an emotional level that allowed the prior karmic dynamic of natal Pluto to be actualized. And if we want to then look further into the South Node, we can look at the number of aspects that it makes to determine other areas or planets that were used in past to actualize the karmic dynamic of natal Pluto. And we then also want to look at the planetary rulers of the South Node by sign and house. And you can even include their aspects, and that will give you more information of how the ego operated on emotional levels in the past with natal Pluto. Again, we'll get into example with this with a specific chart. Now, the North Node is the leading edge of the soul's ego in this life. It represents emotional growth and evolution. Now, I will say when planets are square the nodes, and I got a slide to this, but I'm just jumping into it, the North Node archetypes all are involved in the past as well. So even though that North Node is the ego's movement forward, when planets are square the nodes, both nodes were involved in past lives, which means the planetary rulers of both nodes, where they are by sign, house, and aspects, both were involved in past lives. Again, we'll try to get some specific example for you. But the North Node archetype in general represents insecurity because it is unknown. It's uncharted territory versus South Node, where we're coming from. It represents Dharma responsibilities in the future. It is that sense of destiny or that magnetic pull forward we will have on an emotional level. It is a point of movement, evolving, growing. EA calls it the current life mode of operation on emotional levels that will allow the evolutionary intent of the soul, the Pluto polarity point as we call it, to be actualized. And of course, we go into detail here as well. Is that North Node making aspects to other planets? How will they be involved in helping actualize the evolutionary intent on an egoic level? Where are the rulers of the North Node by sign and house, and what are their aspects? It's going to bring in more detail that we're going to be utilizing in this life to, again, help us on emotional levels evolve that evolutionary intent of the soul. Now, what we have here is the past and the future are always in the tension of the present moment. All are always activated. The past, the South Node on an egoic basis, and the future, the North Node on an egoic basis, are always juggling back and forth in the tension of the present moment, which is always represented by the moon. So this is going to be true in the natal chart for a lifetime. It will be true for the transiting moon and nodal axis any moment of any day, and collectively for all of us when we're looking at it as the transits. We're all experiencing a South Node in Aquarius. We're all experiencing either re-imprinting our traumas or detaching and objectify them. We're all experiencing the North Node in Leo. We are all experiencing that need to move forward and be creative and break free from the traumas of the past or break free from conditioning factors of society. Aquarius. So the past, again, is always trying to shape the future in the present moment. Whether we look at this or a lifetime through the natal chart, or we look at the transiting moon and nodal axis, the past is always trying to project itself forward for security reasons. And it takes courage, it takes effort to break free from that past and move into the unknown, to move forward in new directions than what we have before. Now can you see why we have a mean motion of the nodes retrograde? When these two nodes, points in space, exact opposite all the time. The rest of the planetary nodes are not exactly opposite. It's subject for another day. The moon's nodes are always exactly opposite each other. So there's that tension that comes through. You can see then what we want, that retrograde motion of the nodes, to help us leave that past behind and move forward. Now, planets square the nodes. And by the way, I just want to say something for those of you on class, either live or listening to a recording afterwards. I did get someone who emailed some questions about planets square the nodes. Good questions. I did not get them. I did not see them in time to create some slides on them. I'm not going to address them, but I had some slides started. I'll include them next month. So point is, if you go from month to month on these classes and some questions arise and you haven't seen it addressed, by all means, send us an email. But it would be helpful to get the email a week or 2 weeks ahead of time. If if I get an email just a day or two ahead of time, I might already have class prepped and my work schedule may not allow me to add it on. So I have some questions that have been asked. I will address them next month. When planets are square the nodes, it creates in evolutionary astrology a phenomena that we call skip steps. And what this means is both the south node and the north node were active in past lives. They both have a history. They both have karma from the past. And whatever planet is square the nodes, I'll show you some math here in just a little bit. Whatever planets are squaring the nodes, that archetype skips back and forth between the nodes, not totally integrating the lessons of that planet. In other words, as we're going to look at today, moon square the nodes, what we've talked about here, emotional self-reliance, the emotional maturation process, dealing with all of the hormonal issues, dealing with, the early environment with the parents, something's going to be arrested about those archetypes. We explore it in each chart by the specific signs, houses, aspects, etc. But everything we've looked at for the archetype of the moon gets arrested. It doesn't get fully integrated and learned, and the moon will pop back and forth between those two nodes rather than really learning the lesson. What happens is we get uncomfortable with the moon relating to one of the nodes or the planet relating to one of the nodes, and then that planet skips over to the other nodes. Again, as we go through this series, I'll try and give you enough example with the planets that it'll start to just flow for you and make sense. Sometimes this is an area that in evolutionary astrology becomes a little confusing until we have some practice with it. I love it. I always look for planets square the nodes. I always see them as being part of the whole karmic complex of any soul when there are planets square the nodes. Now, as the last month's class was sun square the nodes, the sun really doesn't get skipped. There's still some karma, but it doesn't get skipped. I mean, who of you cannot sense your sun sign and your sun house. Refer back to that class, September 2017, if you want more information. When a planet, though, is square the nodes and they skip back and forth between the two nodes and they do not evolve that archetype, we have to look for a way out. We have to look for a way to resolve it. And so in EA, we will call it the resolution node. And that's how we learn to evolve through the skip steps. And the resolution node is always the node that last crossed over the planet, square the nodes. Now, because the nodes move in a clockwise fashion, you start with that planet and you go clockwise, you reverse through the signs, you reverse through the houses to get to the first node you come to. That is the resolution node. That can be the north node, that can be the south node. It can be either node as a resolution node. That node will then become the bottom line. There I go. There's some more chart. I got another slide that I just got to hit on that I'll add into next month as we go through this series. That resolution node becomes the bottom line in which we have to integrate that planet in order for it to evolve and integrate all the archetypes of whatever that planet represents. So here today, we're going to use the moon as our example. I don't remember which node is the resolution node. We'll look it up to see as we go through our example here today. First of all, I just want a slide to show you how we determine aspects to the nodes. Again, we take the nodes clockwise from the planets. And so with the north node right here, we start with Uranus, and this is the outer circle. We start with Uranus and we go all the way around the circle to get to the north node. It is a waning or balsamic conjunction to Uranus. Opposite with the south node, we still start with the planet, which in this case is Uranus, but the south node is making a waxing gibbous opposition to Uranus. Uranus is 1909. The south node is 1936. Nodes go backwards. When the node gets to 1909, it would be an exact opposition. So north node, waning or balsamic conjunction. South node, gibbous or waxing or gibbous opposition to Uranus. Okay, now here's an example of skip steps, and I simplified it for us. We're just going to look at the planet Pluto here at 16 degrees Virgo. And again, because the nodes reverse through the zodiac, reverse through the houses, we're going to go this direction till we find the first node. In this example here, it's going to happen to be the north node. This is the resolution node. The nodes could be flipped, could be the south node just as easy. With the nodes at 22, they've not reversed back to being exact at 16. So what I show here in purple is that the nodes are applying squares. The north node is making a crescent first quarter square to Pluto. The south node is making a disseminating last quarter square to Pluto. If the nodes were 16, they'd be exact squares, the blue examples. If the nodes were at 12 degrees, they would be separating squares. Then it'd be a first quarter and last quarter square. The applying squares with any planet square the nodes are going to have a lot more tension because the squares have been building up. If they're exact, it is as intense as it can get with that planetary skip step. And if they're separating, it has a tendency to be a little easier to move through and integrate because they've been dealing with it prior lifetime. Make sense in regards to that? And so I also like to put in here just the whole cycle of phases and aspect, just a generic slide for people. Gives you a little reference to that if you want to find it. And of course, this is going in a 0 to 360 counterclockwise fashion. And goes just the opposite for the nodes. Okay. Those are my slides for today. And so what I'd like to do is draw in our volunteer. And oops, I'm going to go to the chart. I don't know what I did when I was drawing up the chart, but I made a mistake to the chart. So any questions on the materials, Leroy? And if not, was our volunteer able to make it live on the class? Give you the.
There she is.
Yes,
Hello?
can you hear me?
I
Hello?
can hear you. Yes, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, welcome from, oh gosh, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Slovenia.
Yes, Slovenia.
Okay, I did pronounce it right. So let me just clarify for everybody. The birth data was correct, but I don't know where I got a different degree Capricorn rising, okay? March 10th, 1968, 3:50 a.m. in the morning in Jesenice, Jesenice, Slovenia. So let me just briefly point out things in the chart for people who are listening, and then I'm going to hear from you first, okay? As we look at these planets square the nodes in this series, I've really wanted to do more of an entire chart interpretation for everybody as example. So I want to start out and point out that we have Pluto retrograde 21.5 Virgo, Uranus's new phase 27.5 Virgo retrograde. Of course, anybody past 1965 birthdays are going to have Uranus new phase Pluto. They are both intercepted in the 8th house with the Porphyry house system. And of course, if you haven't heard this, evolutionary astrology always uses the true node, where the nodes actually were in the sky, not the mean node averaging its traveling. When you use the true node, that's how the nodes are retrograde 90% of the time, direct 10% of the time. They actually wobble as the moon's making its passage through the cycle of the zodiac as well. So the south node is at 19 degrees Libra in the 9th house. The ruler by sign Venus is over here at 23 degrees Aquarius first house. The ruler of south node by house, 9th house Jupiter, is over here at 28 degrees Leo. It's retrograde. And so the two rulers of the south node are opposing each other. The north node is down here in the 3rd house at 19 degrees Aries. It is a balsamic conjunction to the ruler by sign, Mars, at 17 degrees Aries. And the ruler by house, 3rd house, is Mercury at 22 Aquarius over here with the south node rulers oppositions. So we already have some nodal axis aspects starting to come into the picture here. The planet that is square the nodes, as today's class has been about, is the moon. And the moon is showing up at 20.5 degrees Cancer. It is a few degrees, what is that, 3 degrees inside the descendant in the 7th house. If we would start with the moon, by example here of the math, okay? If we start with the moon and we start reversing through the houses and signs of the zodiac, the first node we come to is the north node. So this is going to be the resolution node. This is the bottom line that we have to focus on with any of these emotional skip steps of the moon. The north node is at 19. It is 1 degree past 20. So the nodes are separating squares from the moon by 1 degree. Okay, reversing backwards, 22, 21, 20 to 19. It's moved past that 20 degrees of the moon. Briefly, I just kind of guessed here with my volunteer. We don't know quite evolutionary state. She was raised, of course, as you can see, in a communist country. She did not have any religious conditioning growing up. She was raised by two parents. They were both teachers. She has one sister. Father was the spiritual one in the family, artist. He is almost blind now. Mother was more or less the head of the family. I am gathering from this that father might be the more nurturing parent. Mother might be the more authoritarian parent. Our volunteer has been married 24 years. She has two young adult sons. She is going to become a grandmother soon. And she's been employed by the same company for 25 years. When she was growing up earlier, there really wasn't a lot of class differences. But over time, as the communism hasn't had such a strong influence in our country, you're now starting to see some distinctions between economic classes, and she currently puts herself in middle class. Volunteer, you are welcome to add on any information or details that you would like to add to the picture. Were you able to listen to the first part of the class?
Yes, I was able. Maybe, okay, you are right regarding my mother, who was more male in the family. But the nurturing one was actually my grandmother, who was living with us.
Okay, all right. What I would like to do is, based upon the slides that we looked at earlier, I'd just like to start out with some feedback from you. What's hitting you on an emotional or intellectual level? What can you share with us as your own feedback with how you may think Moon Square, the nodes here, is operating?
I would say that I really need this time alone that you were speaking to at the beginning of the class. I really have these periods when I need to be alone, and I am lucky enough to have a husband who understands that. So I don't have any problems doing. Second thing is that I have found myself a job. Okay, I'm employed in the same company, but I have changed jobs inside of that company, but all of them were related to travel. So I really travel quite a lot for business, and I find these business travels like escape. When you start to prepare for a travel, you don't need to think about other things. Then you are on travel, then you come back. So you always have these periods where you are practically not really present. But besides these escapes, let's say, I also need to have quite a lot of independence, quite a lot of time alone, also when I am at home. That is, let's say, one thing that I could connect to the lecture that you had.
Sure. Let me ask a little more background information from you. Because you have the moon in Cancer, okay, which is in the sign that it rules, do you feel that one or both of your parents were emotionally supportive when you were young?
I don't think that any of them was really emotionally supported. I don't think they really understood me. So it was more, my mother had to be ambitious. She was also the headmaster and so on. She really didn't have time to be emotional. Now it is better now when she's older. And my father, he was always a little bit in his own world.
Now, you say you have one sister. Are you the older or younger?
I'm the older.
Okay. And did grandmother live with you your whole life?
Yes.
Or all through your young, you know, grandma was there when you were born and she was already
Yes.
living. So would you say she was the emotionally nurturing one?
Yes, yes, she was. She died when I was 24, but until that time, she was always a part of the family. And she was
Mm-hmm.
really a mother in the family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, Part of me just wants to point this out because you know, there's a tendency. I'm based in the U.S., so there's a tendency that we have a lot of our students, associates, you know, more US based, and, you know, forgive us for, you know, putting ourselves out there as everybody lives like us. What I'm hearing with your environmental conditionings is you had more of that extended family environment that we do not typically see here in the US. Um, it's rare in our country to actually have a grandparent live with you.
Well, it is not really the country, because in our country we live like you are living.
Mm-hmm.
It was only our family that lived like that, because grandmother was alone and my mother didn't want to leave her all alone, you know, and she was just a part of the family. But it is not the, let's say, the how we live in our country normally.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate this, getting a little more feedback from you. And I take it this is maternal grandmother from what you just said, mother not wanting her own mother to be alone.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Um, I can start rattling a bunch of things off, but before I do, let me check in with you. Do you have any questions for me in regards to any of this material?
Not really, but I'm very curious to find out about my skipped step, because I really, really don't feel. I was asking myself already for quite a long time, what does this moon as a skipped step mean for me? Because I really
Mm-hmm.
don't feel it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure. Some of it may be that you're so when you put moon in Cancer in the seventh house, this creates a very strong sensitivity to everyone else. Okay.
Hmm.
So, for instance, you may be able to pick up on something with one of your sons before they're even aware that that's what they're feeling or that's their life situation that they're going through under any and all circumstances. Where you would have to be careful is compromising on your own emotions to keep peace in the family or to help everybody else. Okay. I do
Yes.
perceive that you're really working through these skip steps. All right.
Hmm.
So, what I go ahead, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say that you are completely right, because my main problem throughout my life was that I was feeling the problems of my sons even more, I think, than that they are feeling them. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, and so that's where I'm going to say that some of it has to come through, and it's not that there might not be things in the marriage too. Um, I'm going to break it down a little bit for everybody who listens to this class, okay? And just kind of show them how some of the archetypes and the resolution node is working, all right? Now, this is all going to be relative to an eighth house Pluto, okay? And Uranus is new phase that. And what we had not pointed out earlier is the fact that the moon is in a gibbous opposition to Pluto. Moon is at 19. I compare the moon to the outer planets because we live in a geocentric Earth-based environment. It's how we observe, correlate. When you are looking, and these two are in Virgo, they're retrograde, they're intercepted. Okay. When you see Virgo 8th house, there can be prior lives in which the soul felt powerless. Okay. 8th house, power versus powerless. Pluto rules 8th house. Virgo, we have to learn how to serve another. Those two archetypes coming through patriarchal conditionings and distortions. It is possible that you have some past life patternings where you either were forced to give up your power or you chose to give up your power. Sun in Pisces, I'm also going to serve. I'm going to be the nurse. I'm going to, be the healer, whatever it is. Second, 8th house can sometimes be slavery or enslavement, okay? I'm just picking up on, did you have a lifetime or two where you felt powerless? And it has your soul coming in this lifetime with Uranus new phase Pluto, kicking that to smithereens. Anybody, and this is going to be reiterated by Mars new phase Saturn in Aries. Don't fence me in. Don't tell me what I can or cannot do. All right. And if we look at this, here's something else I'd like to point out. Mars, ruler of the North Node, gets drawn into this. We have a yod here. Evolutionary astrology uses wide orbs between the North Node, Mercury, Venus, and Pluto. We have a yod here, okay? So this is going to draw this Mars in. It will even, in some respects, draw in Saturn. And so here is that, and Mars and Saturn to Pluto are waning in conjuncts, okay? Outer adjustments. So when people come at you in your world, you're like, no, sir, don't fence me in. And so there is a busting out of your soul energy that's going on. South Node, ego of the past here, Libra, 9th house, okay? You either had to compromise on yourself to get along and have your freedoms, okay? Or you could have, broken free and just left. Did you get to loneliness where you would find yourself into relationships that maybe weren't healthiest for you? Or did you get some codependencies in relationships? That may have happened. This moon, okay, square the nodes. Your, just by nature of your job, has been your saving grace. Nodes in 3rd, 9th are going to be traveling, okay? I think what you have done sometimes with this moon square the nodes is, because you're so emotionally sensitive, and 7th house can just pick up on someone else's emotions as much as your own, okay? I think what your skip steps would sometimes be is emotionally running away. Okay? You some of the things that you yourself said. And again, I'm going into the skip steps first, and then we're going to move into the resolution node, but I'm trying to help establish some story here for everyone. How this could have operated in the past, okay, was you would start to feel so enmeshed. I need my freedom. And you'd break free and you'd run away. In past lives, it may not have operated as it does this time, where you just happen to have a husband that understands this is your job, lets you go. You just naturally happen to get that time alone when you go off to travel. When you have nodes in 3rd, 9th, movement, whether a walk around the block, driving in the car, or traveling to another country, or traveling for your job, movement allows processing. And so this lifetime, that natural ability to take your job, Saturn, moving into this, and find that traveling naturally allowed you to have that alone time and to process your own emotions. I'm thinking you didn't get that in past lives. And so I've got, excuse me, I got a couple of things flashing through. Let me bring in a couple of other things for this too. Ruler of South Node by sign and house is both over, excuse me, are opposite each other here. Even though Jupiter's in the 8th, it's retrograde in Leo. These are more signatures of don't fence me in, give me my freedom. If you would have ended up in a job where you didn't have this movement and you maybe had to be stuck in a desk job, or if you would have ended up married and a housewife, you may not have processed these emotional skip steps as much as you have. Bottom line, with North Node in the 3rd house, communication and movement. And because the sign is Aries with the 3rd house, this is going to be inner communication with myself. You can just say, excuse me, need to be alone, and you can just take off, Mars, even if it is to, you know, go buy groceries in the grocery store. It just, getting yourself alone here has been what's needed for you to be able to process the emotions of what's yours, what belongs to someone else, and feel your own emotional inner peace, homeostasis, emotional balance here. You know, a lot of it has probably been helped now by the fact that for our listeners, your sons are in their early 20s, so they're young adults, and are they both out of the house?
Yes.
Are they? Yeah, they're both
Yes,
out of the home. So,
well,
so that's
one is out of the home, one is still coming back, but they are mostly out of the home.
so they're getting more and more out of the home, which also is starting to give you some space from them, you know, compared to when they were in the home. And just naturally being a mother, you probably have been so, there were layers of enmeshment with them that you may just not have even recognized until now that you get some distance and can see some space from that.
Yes, maybe I
Let
can
me say,
yeah.
go ahead.
Maybe I can
No, you
tell
go ahead.
also that I really had a crisis when I was 29 years old after my both sons were born. It was, of course, Saturn return, but I just felt so trapped. You know, I had a family, I had a house, I had 2 sons, and I was really feeling down, depressed.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was like being in a jail or something.
Yes. Yes. There's the mini pattern of what we're seeing with this Pluto signature intercepted, and that even the opposition to the sun, you know, sun in Pisces second can be, you know, a type of imprisonment as well. I sometimes will say enslavement, but we know imprisonment broadly is a Pisces term as well. Yes, you lived a mini version of that. What I'm also triggering on is, could there have been some past life patterning, moon square the nodes, where you became a mother and you became responsible for children, and maybe you didn't want to be a parent. Maybe, you know, it could have been both ways. It could have been somewhat feeling trapped into parenthood, or it could have been losing children early. Okay, a child that would die young, that could, in other words, there can be some literally physical situations from past lives that revolve around the familial environment and children that could also be a pattern with the skip steps, in addition to the feeling, you know, the patterns of feeling trapped and imprisoned with this opposition and South Node Libra 9th that was going on. I want to point out something else too. When, And I'll put some slides into this. I'm realizing as we go through this, I have some additional slides. And I think it's part of the questions that I got from someone that I didn't have a chance to get to. When the resolution node is the north node, the bottom line is going to be emotionally moving forward, moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. And as we listen to this chart example, this is what this person has been able to have. Moon in its own sign, that emotional withdrawal animation cycle. I need my alone time. I need to be able to process all these emotions that are going on that belong to me, and I need to separate myself from others so I know what's my emotions versus what's their stuff. North node resolution node happens to be in Aries. This is going to emphasize I need to be by myself. I need to be alone. I need to be free. North node is emphasizing this needs to be, I just need to be moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. If the resolution node was the south node, you could see more things coming up from the past that would have to be dealt with in order to move forward. More things coming up from the past that would have to be dealt with in order to move forward. So while either node can be the resolution node, there's a difference between resolution node, south node, having to really work with cleaning up the past, versus north node, bottom line, trying to emotionally move forward. Make sense?
Yes.
Thank you for answering, volunteer. I have a tendency to say that all the time with clients, you know, and then I'm one-on-one, I can get some feedback, but I'm all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is class. They're muted.
No, but maybe I can comment you said before that maybe I have lost a child in the previous life early and so on. When I was pregnant with my first child, I was frightened all of the nine months that something will be wrong with the child or that he will die early. Really, a terrible fear for my child. So maybe this is coming from there.
Yeah. There you are. There's the pattern, and you know, even though that is not what come to pass, that could be something, you know, that would have happened in a previous lifetime. Yes, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that very much. And so let me just expand. Let's expand just a little bit with the rulers of the planetary nodes as well in regards to this. Boy, I just got little flies, just it's like fruit flies going around me. Apologies for that. I have to get them out of my way. So ruler of South Node is Libra, Venus, 9th house, Jupiter, and they are a gibbous opposition to each other. And so in many ways, what they have been working to do is really expand this whole thing of objectivity for your own ego from the past, because I'm thinking that it also might be a possible pattern. When we see Libra 9th house, okay, there can be compromising on truth. There can be compromising on standing up for what we believe in. There can be some compromising here in relationships. Okay, I'm just going to work to get along with everybody. And yet, the rulers here, Venus at 23 Aquarius, Jupiter retrograde 28 Leo, are really being pressured. Here's that opposition again, in which I can't settle. I've got to really, what matters to me? What's important to me? I've got to stand in my own truth and my own power. I've got to be who I am. Now, ruler of the North Node in third house Mercury, it is possible here with this signature and these oppositions coming off of an eighth house Pluto again in Virgo intercepted, that you either were not allowed to have your own power and stand up for yourself, or you were afraid to. And this would reiterate Aquarius first house needing to be alone to objectify self and values. But it can also have been, if I really break out into my own power and I break out to be who I am in my own freedom, it won't go well for me. And so it's interesting then with this North Node resolution and ruler Mars in Aries, this is almost like the universe pushing you forward from either feelings or an inability from the past to really break free, to be alone. You know, part of me wonders, and again, this is just an opinion, all right? I don't take anything here on gospel. I'm wondering, because this is also the marriage house, okay? And there's 3 planets in here. I'm wondering if in a past life you didn't have an intimate partner who would not give you freedom. And the question would be, was it current partner? And there's been enough lifetimes that the pendulum swings and he gives you all the freedom you need, whereas in prior lifetime a while back would give you no freedom? Or did you have a history of choosing intimate partners that didn't give you freedom? And you've built up the karma that you now need, evolutionary necessity. You need a partner who gives you freedom in order to really break free and find yourself and evolve yourself forward emotionally. So I don't know if you have any intuitive hits on how it has went, but that pattern's going to be there. It's going to be one or the other. Okay. Do you understand? And was I clear in how I expressed that?
Yes, yes. I can
Yeah.
say that when we met, it was more than 30 years ago. We were immediately together, like we are continuing something from the past. So maybe the first thing would be correct, and another thing is that I know that if I would not get this freedom in this relationship, there would be no relationship anymore.
Yes. And again, this is where that yacht is coming through with Pluto that draws in these other planets and the Venus oppositions to Jupiter. You've been through the lifetimes of relationships that did not give you freedom. And it's just really built up in pressure that it must be there for you this time around. And so then this comes back to allowing this moon square the nose to really step forward into emotional self-reliance, because you have found that way to just step forward, step forward, step forward, step forward. I must honor myself and what I need to do, including what I need emotionally. Let me check in and see if there are any questions from anybody else who's listening or anything.
Well, I'm not sure if this is relevant, Kim, but maybe you could give your impressions on Taurus on the 4th and Venus in Aquarius first. I think you covered the Venus in Aquarius in the first house, of course, but we had a question on that about in terms of, past life possibilities.
Sure. If we then look to that early nurturing environment here, and we look at Taurus on the 4th house cusp, okay, its ruler over here is Venus. I'm going to glance at some of the aspects and see if what else there is. Oh, here's something I have not brought into the picture just yet, okay. And we look at ruler Venus is over here, 1st house Aquarius, okay? Let's just go back to her own environmental conditionings, all right? Even though she was born to 2 teachers, school teachers, she expressed that neither parent could see her or could understand her for who she is. Sometimes when you see Taurus on the 4th house cusp, the distortions are just, poverty and starvation, okay? Can they even survive and live? As that Taurus starts to evolve for itself, what you can have is someone who very early on, 4th house, early environment, Taurus, I must take care of myself. My parents aren't doing it. This could be reiterated by the ruler Venus being in 1st house, being in Aquarius. This would give her some abilities to almost objectify herself earlier on at a young age. Now, feedback is also that grandmother, maternal grandmother was always there. So even though parents didn't supply the early environment nurturing, it is really quite possible that grandmother fulfilled this. And so grandmother then could have been helpful to her in some objectification about herself. Now, when this comes to past lives, that pattern could have also told us she herself didn't live long. Again, the survival issues that would come in. The Mars in Aries conjunct the North Node, 3rd house, accidents. And again, Moon square the nodes, looking at everything from past life patterning. We could have a situation where she just didn't live long. And so she could come in on some soul level here with a real strong soul energy to survive and to say, I will do this on my own. And recognizing that early on. What I didn't bring up here that I missed is, sorry if I'm swatting, is little flies. Neptune is square the nodes. These 2 rulers of the South Node, Venus, Jupiter opposition. Neptune is in there at 26.5 Scorpio, and it's retrograde, and it is square the nodes. There's several signatures that could go on here. This could, Neptune is also in the 10th house, okay? This could be
Neptune's not square the nodes, it's square that axis that
Jupiter. Square Venus, Jupiter. Thank you. Yes, clarify me when I do that. Thank you. Yeah, Neptune is in a T-square with Venus, Jupiter. But Neptune, Scorpio, 10th house, this is another survival signature, okay? And it takes the, it takes the fluffiness of Neptune and brings it down to earth. Scorpio, what's the bottom line? 10th house, how do I be practical with everything? In the environmental conditionings that this volunteer had sent, she had, I'm looking for the words, she, no religion in a communist country, but father was very spiritual. And since her Saturn return, when she had that crises over the two young children feeling trapped, from there she has been more and more dragged toward spirituality myself. She didn't participate in any mainstream religions, and for her, very important to find the truth. I do not fall for instant solutions and modern spirituality. In other words, probably doesn't fall for a lot of the new agey metaphysics fluff stuff. That's going to be this Neptune signature here. And yet with Neptune retrograde in this signature, there is a deep need to have an understanding of what's it all about and why am I here. This signature in the T-square with Venus and Jupiter, it deepens them. It deepens this Libra 9th house. I'm just going to, be the karma chameleon. I'm going to be whoever you want me to be in order to be liked. No, this is another signature in addition to this Mars new phase Saturn that says, I go deep and I am really trying to find my own way. I am going to survive this lifetime. Now, this could be somewhat counteractive of this sensitive moon signature. This could be, again, a signature of suppressing emotions. Scorpio, Capricorn, okay? Scorpio, 10th house. And Neptune rules Pisces, rules another water archetype. So these water archetypes are just being kind of weighted down. Her own thing, dragged more and more towards spirituality. She could have come from these survival issues here, okay, that didn't have time for the finer things in life, didn't have time to be emotionally sensitive and feeling. I'm just trying to stay on my feet and run and escape and survive. Now, as this has really been allowed to deepen with this signature, this is allowing her to become more and more comfortable with herself. Her soul being able to recognize, I do get to stand in my own power this lifetime. I am becoming more and more self-reliant, and I can be opening up to deeper and deeper spiritual paths as a way for me to be in the world. I would venture to say that there's going to be some future life exploring here of spirituality. Sun in Pisces, a Pisces polarity point, Sun in Pisces sitting on the Pluto polarity point, okay? Almost in a trine. Well, it's in a trine. This is a grand trine right here, okay? I didn't notice that in my prep. I missed that one. I'm going to say that there's going to be future exploration of deeper and deeper spirituality that has an emotional base and connection, not fluffy, real stuff. And it's just going to allow you to continue to emotionally open up. Now, I also missed this. Thank you for allowing me talk in a step-by-step 1, 2, 3 fashion. With this grand trine, this is the other thing that has lessened the intensity of moon square the nodes. This is someone who's been able to do, most likely, a fair amount of emotional processing. And the reason, part of the reason I say that, it's not always the case when it's just 3 planets in a trine in water. Okay, it's not just a water trine. They can sometimes be avoiding it. 2 of these planets are in Earth houses. Okay, and I think that that kind of, again, it provides the container for water, but it also allows for emotional processing. For those of you who are the Neptune and Scorpio generation, we are, I got the signature. We are emotional detectives. It takes that and it asks, to me, broadening out from the perspective of, you know, religious conditionings, you know, Garden of Eden myth, that separation of spirit and flesh. And really, in natural law, they're 2 sides of the same coin. How Jeffrey Green would always say, evolution takes place through the emotional body. And that's I think what we're doing at the ending of this Piscean age and Neptune in Pisces transit, we are starting to reconnect the spiritual, emotional bodies. It's not intellectual spirituality. It is senses spirituality. And Neptune and Scorpio generation can be good at that. And it's retrograde. So she's questioning that. She's searching for that in that 10th house, slow but sure way. That helps then to have a lot more emotional processing with this grand trine in water, and which then helps this moon square the nodes, okay, lighten up with its all of its situations and experiences. Moon in the 7th house will also lend itself to processing. In her case, North Node resolution node, again, back to the inner communications with self. Ruler Mercury's in the 1st house, inner communications with self, as much as communications with others whom she could emotionally relate to. Any comments from our volunteer or other questions? I was wandering, so thank you for bearing with me. I saw a couple other archetypes pop up.
No, thank you, because I don't really have any other questions. It was very, very interesting, and I learned some new things. I got some confirmations that I'm on the right path, so thank you.
Well, welcome to evolutionary astrology. I don't know how long you've been studying astrology. You didn't mention.
I study astrology. Well, I first studied the psychology astrology, Liz Green's method. And when I finished, and because I have Pluto on the ascendant right now, I was searching for information for Pluto, and I found you 1 year ago.
Oh.
So 1 year ago, I'm already studying.
Well, thank you. And by the way, I don't know if you recognize this, but if we use 50 minutes after 3 a.m., if we use 10 minutes to 4 a.m., and Pluto, or excuse me, you're rising at 17 degrees Capricorn, 22 minutes, you have Pluto over your ascendant 5 times.
Yes.
Okay, you've been feeling it. Yeah, you had Pluto.
Yes.
2016-17. So welcome to your new beginnings. Welcome to breaking free from all kinds of conditionings. And as Pluto squares the nodes by transit, okay, you really want to be holding healthy boundaries between yourself and others. You may be finding new ways in which you need to be breaking free, and it may involve job. Is there changes in the job again? Are you getting close to some retirement or some leaving of a new job? Is there something new coming along in regards to responsibilities and promotions? And you would also want to hold healthy boundaries between yourself and your transiting Pluto opposed moon emotional needs versus all of the work requirements, okay? Or you could reiterate the moon square the nodes. When a transiting planet squares your natal nodes, you really want to work with that transiting planet so it doesn't create skip steps.
Mm-hmm.
Make
Well,
sense?
it was a very, very turbulent time for the last 2 years in my working environment. That is true, and nobody knows how it will finish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you making the effort to hold healthy boundaries between what's yours to do and what's not yours to do in the work environment?
Yes, yes, I'm feeling, I think now, okay, it happened now for a few times already. This, let's say, tensions and crisis, we can say crisis. And now, for the first time, I am completely calm. I'm not afraid what will happen. I am completely calm, and I know that somehow I will survive also if something terrible happens here.
You know, that is an essence of that moon signature. Then again, when moons square the nodes, can we find that depth of emotional inner security, regardless of what's changing in our outer world? Mm-hmm. There you go. You've got your theme for the next 2 years now. Not that there isn't other things going on. You got transiting Neptune balsamic your sun as well.
Mm-hmm. And
So
Chiron return.
and your Chiron return. Yep. It'll be a few years before Neptune reaches your sun, but make sure you're finding time for your spiritual growth.
I think this is the only thing that is helping right now.
Yeah. I am a little prejudiced myself towards evolutionary astrology. Let me check in one more time with Leroy. Any other questions or comments, Leroy?
No, it's good to go. Great class, though.
All right. Well, thank you so much to our volunteer, and we will let you finish out your evening and get some rest.
Thank you once again from my side.
Oh, you're most welcome. All the best. Oh, and everyone else, I need a volunteer for Mercury Square the Nodes. I do not have anybody who has volunteered for Mercury Square the Nodes yet. If you look at the email that was sent out, I'm starting to put in where I have a volunteer for various classes. So I need a Mercury Square the Nodes if you want to email me and volunteer. And thank you very much. Hold on. What am I doing? Hold on. I got to go to the last slide. Jupiter in Scorpio is already up on the forecasting webinars page if you would like to immerse yourself in that. And here are our future public webinars. As you can see, Mercury retrograde, even though it's a month and a half away, it's going to be my next public webinar. And then I think Leroy, oops, I don't know what I did there. Okay, there we go. I think Leroy has already got the Saturn public webinars posted if any of you want to enroll in those. All right, that's it. Now I can close down class. All right, everybody, thank you very much. See you next month.